We've been previewing and we'll continue to preview throughout the summer BYU football opponents as we are 93 days away. Next up on the list is Arizona. So now joining us on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is the senior editor of GoAZCats.com, Matt Moreno. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're excited. We count down to Arizona every day. We look forward to this for, like the whole year. So what are some of the biggest storylines, I guess, going into fall camp here in about 2 months for the Arizona Wildcats?
Well, I think it would be wrong for me to not start with Khalil Tate, Heisman contender coming into the season at quarterback for Arizona. Took over the job full-time last year after playing a little bit as a freshman. Really came into his own, set some records, had a great month of October. Broke a lot of records within the Pac-12, within Arizona's program for a quarterback, rushing, and really just became the star in Tucson and the star of the team, the face of the team. And now he'll head into the season knowing he's a starter for the first time, which I think will be a little bit interesting to see how he approaches it, knowing he has to really step into that leadership role and become the guy for Arizona football. So I think it's right to start with him. And then next, I think, is Kevin Sumlin. They have a new coaching staff on board. Rich Rodriguez is no longer the head coach at Arizona. Had a lot of turnover with the staff. Kept a couple coaches as holdovers from the previous staff, but a new offensive system, a new look, a new vibe around Tucson and Arizona with the program. So those are a couple things to really look forward to with this upcoming fall, and then just kind of the season as itself. I mean, Arizona has a good chance to compete in the South this year, and it's going to be a great opportunity to do some things, make some moves, and capitalize on the buzz they built with Kevin Sumlin now as the head coach coming into this new season.
Staying with Tate for just a second, I mean, obviously, you mentioned, everything that's kind of on the line and potential for him this year, and, he's been fantastic. Is the success of the season largely on his shoulders? Is he feeling that pressure?
And I think that's the thing we're really going to have to learn and figure out as training camp goes on and as the fall gets closer and the season arrives, is can he handle that? He seems like the type of person so far, just getting to know him. I've covered him since he was a recruit in high school, I think a sophomore in high school, and he's really matured and become that leader so far. But you don't know until he hits the field and knows he's a starter and really has that weight on his shoulders of being, a Heisman contender and thought of that same light. Last year he came in and replaced Brendan Dawkins about midway through the season and really took it from there. But he didn't come into the season knowing he was the guy. Right now he has that on his shoulders. He's going to come into the season with a lot of hype, and I think he has the capability and the mindset and the mentality to handle that role, but it's something you won't know until the season starts and games get going.
We're talking to Matt Moreno of GoAZCats.com, previewing the Arizona Wildcats, BYU at Arizona on September 1st. There's kind of this shroud of secrecy with Arizona football in that there were not a lot of interviews granted and discussion from the coaching staff. So what's kind of the perception of what Arizona football is given the limited nature of access in spring football?
Yeah, even though we had limited access and we weren't able to watch spring practice from beginning to end, we were given access towards the end. We were able to watch the final open scrimmage that the team had the week before the spring game. They were obviously able to watch the spring game. The first practice was open as well for the first 30 minutes or so, but we really didn't get a good gauge. I mean, there's still a lot of getting used to each other and the players. Obviously, this coaching staff hasn't recruited those players that are at Arizona right now, so there was a lot of getting familiar with one another and learning tendencies and just becoming closer on a more personal level. So that was kind of what the first practice was about, kind of just learning the ropes. But as spring went on and we were able to get a little bit more access and talk to the coaches a little bit more, there were some things that stood out, and it was definitely you got a better sense of what this team has to work on and needs to get better at and what it's going to be able to do well. I think the running back position is a position that was a little bit of a pleasant surprise. They lost a couple seniors in Zach Green and Nick Wilson, who had been with the team for so long and contributed for so long. So there was some uncertainty about where things could go from here with the running back group. But it's a very deep group. You can go about 5 deep with guys that provide some different skill sets, some different types of ways to run the ball and to help on offense. And I think that really stood out. The big area of concern is going to be the offensive line. It didn't look good. It just didn't look good. And there's going to be some help coming, but they really need to address that. And there needs to be some improvement between now and the first game, the season opener, because it just didn't look great. And Kevin Sumlin addressed that after the spring game and talked about they're going to be looking into grad transfers and looking into some guys to potentially come in and help and potentially help right away. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the summer and how much better they can get, because there were some significant losses along the offensive line, and they're going to need to replace those guys. And there's just it just doesn't fit right now. And I think there's going to be some more movement before the season opener arrives, but that's really a big area of concern for the team right now.
You know, there are inherent unknowns going into a game one every year, regardless of the situation. But as we were just talking about with the new coaching staff in Tucson, a new BYU offense that, you know, that is basically unknown right now. There are a lot of things that are not known on both sides heading into game one. So specifically for Arizona, what's the biggest unknown for the Wildcats right now?
I think going back to the original point of Khalil Tate, we really, truly don't know how he's going to be used. Kevin Sumlin, Noel Mazzoni is the new offensive coordinator. Both of them have said, you know, we're really not changing the offense a whole lot to do different things than what you have seen before here in Tucson and seen at Arizona with Khalil Tate in the past couple of years. But Noel Mazzoni has not been known for necessarily doing exactly what Rich Rodriguez has done. So it'll be interesting to see what that transition is like. There's gonna be more passing from Khalil Tate, and there was games where they didn't pass it a lot last year, and even the year before, they just didn't pass the ball a ton. And a lot of what they did was on the ground and having the quarterback run the ball, and they had good quarterbacks to do that. Brandon Dawkins, who's moved on now to Indiana, and then Khalil Tate were great at running the ball and doing those types of things. But it's going to be a little bit different. The quarterbacks are going to have to be able to pass it. Khalil Tate is going to have to be able to make some throws that maybe he wasn't asked to make as much under the previous staff. And I think that's the real big key. It's going to be a big part of what leads to potential success for this team, and it'll be an important part of Khalil Tate as he develops and becomes the starting quarterback for good at Arizona. And a lot of what could happen this season is going to be dependent on what they can do on that offensive side of the ball. And then on defense, it's a third year under Marcel Yates. He was a holdover. They kept him on staff. The players took to Twitter, took to social media, and really put support behind their defensive coordinator. And it's now he was able to be retained. He worked for Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M several years ago, and so there was a connection there. So he was able to stay on board as the defensive coordinator, and now it's the third year, and it's about that time that things need to really take a big turn and pick up. And I think that's the next big step for this defense. You really don't know. It looked better during spring ball, but you really don't know what it's going to be like until you hit the field. And I think there's still some optimism there and some hope that they can be a strong group, but that's still a bit of a question mark heading into the summer.
In the Pac-12 and the Big 12, you don't have to be good on defense. You just have to be good enough because the offenses are really explosive. Arizona, last year, top 10 offense, bottom 25 defense. How much difference do you expect with those two? Do you expect it to maintain a top 10 offense and be a better defense?
It was interesting during spring ball. The defense really won spring. I mean, they were the top group of the spring. Kevin Sumlin mentioned the linebacker group, which is still young. All freshmen. The starting unit was all freshmen last year. All played. Were among some of the leading tacklers on the team. I think the top two leading tacklers were freshman linebackers. So they're really happy with that group. They really want to build around that group. But I think the thing that will bring optimism for Arizona fans is the defensive line. It's been kind of the butt of the joke in a lot of ways for the last several years because it was so undersized and they just didn't have the size when you got into conference play and got into Pac-12 play. It just looked different than the other teams they were facing, and a lot of fans didn't like it. That was the part of the team that they really just didn't like, and it's taken a jump up this year. They've added some junior college transfers, some mid-year players who are going to be part of the rotation now, and it'll be an improved group, and I think that's something we saw in spring, and I think that's really what this defense is going to have to build around is that defensive line and that improvement. They look bigger now, and I think they're going to look more imposing than they would have, in the last several years. But I think the defense is due for a rise. It just feels like a group that's ready to make that next jump. And like you mentioned, you don't have to be great; you just have to take that next level. And they haven't even been good at times over the last several years. So it's time for them to kind of take that next jump. And offensively, I think they'll figure it out. There were some wrinkles that they're still trying to get ironed out. Khalil Tate obviously is running a different system, different terminology. That's what the coaching staff focused on a lot, just the terminology, getting on the same page with that. And that's going to be an important part of this summer workout program for that offensive side of the ball is to get on the same page with the terminology and learning the plays and just get a good feel for one another, because they were not on point throughout the spring, and there were flashes of different things going deep a little bit more than necessarily we saw under Rich Rodriguez, and I think there were some bright spots, but I think it'll be about just being consistent and really finding a rhythm on that offensive side of the ball. But I think once they get that tied in and locked in, I think they'll be ready to go, and they'll still be as productive because, like I mentioned, of that running back group, it gives them some more versatility on that offensive side of the ball.
Well, in 2006 and 2016 and 2007, BYU opened the season with Arizona. We look forward to September 1st when that happens again. Matt, thanks for dropping some knowledge.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, that's Matt Moreno on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.